If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Lore by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, we continue to unravel the mysteries behind the origins, motives and cultures of the 13 vampiric legacies in the world of darkness. This episode will focus on the kings of the Ebony Kingdom, the Guruhi. I have mentioned to you on more than one occasion that the Nosferatu are the Western kindred that claimed supremacy over the Ebony Kingdom, the continent of Africa. When we last spoke of the Liabon, we discussed the idea that the Bonsam and the Akananse and Naglapas that would spawn from them were potentially a Nosferatu offshoot. However, I am of the mindset that they are closer to the Niktuku than the Nosferatu. Anyway, why am I reminding you of this? After all, we discussed all of this a week ago. Well, Neonate, I presented my findings to you as mere speculation. Many Canaanite scholars do not share the same opinion as I, but I have never been one to follow the grain, as it were. If any of the legacies were spat out of the Nosferatu, it would be the Guruhi, the legacy that usually upholds the title of Makajai, the Liabon term for prince. Are they monstrous to look at? Yes, but also no. But I will elaborate on that in just a moment. I can see by the look in your eye that you doubt such a creature could rule the Knights of Africa without breaking the Masquerade. I know that you're just begging to say that because they are monolithic rulers that they have to be a Ventrue offshoot. But this couldn't be any more false. Ventrue have tried to claim Africa as their own, but have failed miserably. They do not even try blending in. After all, most, but certainly not all, are Caucasian kindred, and cannot even blend in even if they tried. Some older, more disgusting, backward blue bloods still see Africa as the Dark Continent. Furthermore, besides sharing presence, the Guruhi just have nothing in common with them. Animalism and potence are the other two disciplines wielded by the Guruhi. I, however, would wager that the Guruhi are actually closer to the Bonsam than the Nosferatu, which makes them a bloodline of a bloodline, if my hypothesis is correct, and I'm just not being overly convoluted for complexity's sake. However, by the end of our discussion, you will understand my thought processes and learn more about this frightening legacy. Rather than revisit the birth of the Nosferatu and Niktuku clans again, I wish to remind you of the Bonsam origin, as this will be far more useful for tonight's discussion. It involves a lone hunter, originating in what would be the Akan City and Ivory Coast. He would stray far from home, for his village had succumbed to a great famine, for the village animals had died. He would discover an ancient darkness, buried in the ground to hide from the sun. It fled from the hunter, luring him to its domain with a beautiful song, in an attempt to use the hunter's mortal shell as a means of protection. In less delicate words, the darkness, most presumably Zillar, embraced the hunter. The hunter claims to have never been embraced or has embraced, implying that if this claim is in fact true, the Bonsam may have originated as an artificial bloodline, although other Bonsam can and do embrace normally. The Liabon story continues, stating that the hunter would return to the village, confused by what had happened. The darkness within him had boiled in a wave of savage anger, overwhelming the hunter. When his senses returned, the villagers were slaughtered, and the hunter fled far inland, never to return. It is not difficult to work out that the hunter frenzied and devoured those around him. It is this darkness that is the sole focus of my hypothesis. Remember, the Bonsam possess a primordial fear that mortals cannot stomach, but it is not to do with their physical appearance per se. This to me would imply that their Auron, the Liabon spiritual side, is inherently much higher than their I, the human earth part of the soul, which would make sense if one were to believe this darkness that exists within them at all. The Guruhi's clan weakness is very similar to this. The presence and appearance of the Guruhi would reflect their mood, but it has been known to appear as the opposite to what they're feeling. The Guruhi believe that they are descended from a Gambian god, from whom they take their name from. Which god it is, I cannot say, for my research has not provided any stable answers. Yet. Anyway, the progenitor of the Guruhi legacy was said to be hideous to behold and wanted to appear as a dignified ruler rather than a creature spat out from hell. Relating this information back to literal Western vampiric lore, this creature could have been Abzamiliard. This god, presumably Cagna or Cain, cursed the progenitor for such vanity, stating that he could only be as beautiful as the progenitor's soul would permit, meaning The appearance of the Guruhi is far more sensitive to the balance of their aura and eye souls than other legacies. It also means that they have more control over their aura than the Bonsam does, which is presuming that they are indeed closer to the Bonsam than the Nosferatu. But I suppose at the end of the day it does not really matter whether they are a bloodline of the Nosferatu or the Bonsam, for they are so different from both breeds of vampire that it would be easy not to know of their implied lineage. The Guruhi believe that they were the first Liabon to set foot onto the continent. The aforementioned Gambian god gave their descendants the entire Sahara and Ebony kingdom. As such, they are the most commanding legacy. They take their duties terribly seriously, claiming that they are the masters and rulers of both beast and men as they reluctantly share their domains of other Liabon. When cold persuasion fails, they have no shame employing their disciplines when subtlety is clearly not noticed. The intuitive brain may wish to imply that they are weak, but they are certainly most not. They stand their ground through a series of one-sided alliances and inherent savvy for their role. They are reluctant to share their domain, but they understand the benefits of the other Liabon that claim their homes there. Most notably, the Akananse, Osebo, and Shango. They have the most common with the Shango in courtroom etiquette and being level-headed. The Shango are the brains to the Guruhi's strength, and they let the kings rule so they do not have to. Similarly, the Akananse are often counselors and advisors to the Guruhi Magi. As for the Osebo, the Guruhi knows that they are strong enough to carry out commands, but smart to know that that is what suits them. That was once my view of the Bruja, but times do change. Anyway, the Osebo make great scouts and soldiers. The Guruhi also consider the Ishtari to be wise and valuable diplomats. Whilst most Guruhi are remarkably civil to each other, sometimes it is the Guruhi that rebel against each other. I am told that the Keens have divided themselves into two distinct heritages, if one is to believe their legends of old. The first line is the Guruhi I've been explaining to you, the ones who claim to hail from the original Guruhi and the god that gave them their name. The other is a more kinslayer line, judging those of the other lines, occasionally sending them into final death. It is said that this second line are supposed to take over Africa from the first line whenever they become unfit to unrule. That being said, these divisions are mostly forgotten and rarely taken seriously, except by a few Guruhi fanatics. It makes a popular power struggle between some childhood sires at least. The Guruhi never paid much attention to the Kinyonyi, and like the other legacies, they despise the Naglapers. The Guruhi see the Zidundu as rebels waiting to cripple the Keens when they show the first sign of weakness and destroy everything that they have created, which is similar to the La Sombra Ventrue relationship, for lack of a better word. What I mean by what they have created are the tenets, which are the single uniting thread that runs through Liabon society and culture through wisdom, guiding the Liabon into what the Guruhi believe is the model for functional vampiric order, similar to how the Ventrue have moulded the Camarilla and to an extent the Anarchs and the Canaanites that operate under their sects to behave like they do in their board meetings. It is said that each tenet was written by the original members of each legacy, with the Guruhi being the ones to agree on them. I believe they created them all, but you can conjure up your own conclusions. The tenets are taught to the Liabon not as a mandatory system, but an inherent ideology. The laws of the Ebony Kingdom are the blood of every legacy. Of course, most Liabon are not stupid enough to believe this, but that is only a recent mindset. Like our own traditions, each of the 9 tenets is malleable, making them the perfect plaything for Magi in each domain. Let us go through them, as some are similar to our own traditions, whilst others are rather different, which help us understand the Guruhi thinking. Number 1. The Guruhi are the land. It's arrogant beyond words, isn't it? Not even the Ventrue are this blunt, but that is something that makes the Guruhi stand out from the Ventrue. My wording there was very deliberate. The Ventrue are not blunt. They think they are clever for moulding the entire way of thinking onto most kindred. On face value, it is, but everyone knows the Ventrue are manipulative liars and global dictators. Most princes are Ventrue, but not everyone knows they are the ones who created the traditions, but it would surprise anyone when they learned this. The Ventrue go through a lot of effort to make themselves look incredibly intelligent and grandmaster puppeteers, but it is all just amazingly pointless. The Guruhi have blatantly made themselves the perfect image for society. They have clearly set the bar, knowing that no one will meet it, giving each Libon something to strive for, which gives the Guruhi immense power over the rest of the Libon society. They are the land, and they have given it to the other Libon as if the tenet is a metaphorical truth and a blessing to everyone else. Again, its arrogance speaks volumes. Number 2. Those who endure, judge. This tenet speaks of the might of the Magi, the Libon princes. They are the eldest vampires on the continent, and they are the ones who rule domains. Most kindred and Libon hate their princes, but they are masters of perseverance. There are only 2 ways of becoming a prince, and both of these involve death and someone breaking this tenet. Naturally, most Magi enforce this tenet rigidly. Number 3. Belonging grants protection. I believe more thought is required to break down what this exactly means, but it's not too difficult when I begin to compare it to our own customs. Remember when you embraced and Prince Alexandria tried to have you killed? Your sire chose to embrace you without her permission and, therefore, you did not belong to our society. You did not belong to her domain and did not have the right for protection. Of course, things didn't pan out like that, but you are beginning to get the idea, I can see. This is essentially what this tenet means, Neonate. It essentially binds a Libon to a particular domain, but only with the permission of the Magi, who are most often the Guruhi. When you belong to a particular domain, you have ensured protection, until you do something wrong and the prince can dispose of you in one way or another. The inverse can also occur, where a Libon is forbidden to leave a domain, but this is due to the subjective nature of the tenets, as we shall soon explore. Number 4. The secret must be kept. In less fancy terms, one must uphold the Masquerade. During my one visit to Zimbabwe many moons ago, the Libon were far better at following this than the Westerners were. Now, this was during the age before cameras, but the Libon are genuinely freer to exercise their vampirism because of the distribution of settlements there, and the varieties one can find. This being said, the Libon are not as afraid of mortals as they should be, which I believe will be their undoing. Their mindset for this is connected to the spiritualism of many African cultures, each one owning a word or theory about the blood-sucking creatures they are that stalk them in the night. Each Libon holds this tenet over themselves, which is only ever exercised by a high authority if they are found out, which they usually are. Number 5. No secrets from the Magi. I can see by the look on your face this is a bit strange. We all know not to lie to our superiors in this world, but the Guruhi have once again made it very clear, crystal clear in fact, that they are to be obeyed and treated like kings. But it is also a little counterintuitive. Vampires are taught to lie and be deceitful, as just discussed with the previous tenet. In some cases, this tenet has greater importance than the secret must be kept, for many a newer Libon think they can get away with their midnight antics. Therefore, the Guruhi believe that the Libon should be obedient first and self-sufficient second. And yes, lies of omission do count as a breach of this tenet, which is why the Magi have to ask the right questions. Number 6. Sire's command, Chowder inherit. I am told this is actually the Akane legacy that conjured this tenet, but again, you are entitled to think what you will. As with our own sires, it is their responsibility to essentially raise the Chowder into our society, to show them what is deemed acceptable behaviour for kindred, before releasing them into the wild, as it were. It also means that if the Chowder cocks up, the sire will be punished 12-fold. Libon take a step further with these principles, making it a two-pronged guideline. Libon fledglings are entitled to some degree of inheritance from their sires. Most often than not, this is in the form of some sufficient amount of wisdom beyond the standard teaching, while some Magi insists a physical gift must be bestowed upon the Libon fledgling. Number 7. The eldest command undeaf. This is naturally the tenet that most younger Libon feel is the most unnecessary. I do not believe so, as someone who has had to put the rabbit mutts down myself. That said, it is often the most absurd tenet, as I am sure you can imagine, which is why it is the most feared amongst younger Libon. It grants the Magi, the eldest of Libon and domain, the right to pass the sentence that is final death, but it also means they are the ones who decide who can and cannot embrace and be embraced. However, pedantic elders will tell you that the wording of this tenet does not mean it is the only Magi who passes sentence. Elder Libon can destroy the younger if push comes to shove, providing it is within the scope of the other tenets. But again, the other tenets can easily be as this subjective. Number 8. Travelers obey the tenets. Libon do not like kindred, which may not surprise you. You could work that out just by learning this tenet. The Guruhi are not keen on sharing their land with the rest of the Libons, and they have no intention of distributing the power with the Malkavians, Ventu, and whatever straggling Cainite made their way to the Ebony Kingdom. This tenet serves to be the laws of the land, rather than a code adapted by its subscribing members. It is also used by the Magi to compel visiting Libons to follow their interpretations of the tenets. You may think this may go against the belonging grants protection tenet, and you would be right. You would also be right in thinking that no one really knows what this tenet actually means. Finally, number 9. The eldest are Kaholo. As a reminder, the Kaholo are essentially the Libon equivalent to Primogen Council, to use poor Westerner examples. It is a semi-redundant tenet on face value. We know they are the eldest vampires, as is the Magi. This tenet was said to be created by the Kinyonyi as something to be exploited later. But what do I mean by exploited later? Well, the Kinyonyi are mercenaries that travel from region to region, domain to domain, as does every other Libon. Belonging is not mandatory, for that tenet does not state it. Belonging grants protection. It is very easy for them and any other Libon of great strength to say they are Kaholo of a particular legacy and deemed the respect and power they are entitled to. They can then enforce the tenets as they see fit, providing the Magi in a domain approves of it. Or not, depending on how sneaky the Kaholo are. You can see why this tenet is not practiced so frequently, beyond the Kinyonyi forming plentiful relationships with other Magi. It doesn't grant any true benefits unless the Magi is incredibly gullible, as the Magi are not required to listen or follow the advice of the Kaholo. The Kinyonyi are tricksters anyway, so Libon would think twice before working with them. The Guruhi for the most part are anything but naive. When they choose to embrace, they have the pick of the litter, usually choosing figures of authority and power, individuals with a steady head who can lead others into greatness. They have called the Ebony Kingdom home the longest and have always been its rulers, and I doubt very much they will let anyone else other than them replace them as the kings of Africa. No one else has their experience and expertise. However, that does not mean the Guruhi have it plain sailing, especially in these troubling nights. The Second Inquisition could be found all over the world, and the power the Guruhi have to fight back against these hunters puts a great strain on their mentality. Why? The world is changing at a frightening pace. No, not changing. Evolving. New adversities appearing left, right and centre, each one being far more deadly than the last and moving faster than the previous one. The ways of old have long gone, and Africa looks outside its borders for inspirational influence, creating a larger rift between them and the rest of Libon society. In short, the power of the Guruhi is waning, and they may well be a change of guard soon, if it has not happened already. To be kept updated, follow the Lord by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.